Yeah, okay. So it's my second time at GIDS, and last year, my first GIDS, I took this picture, and I had a lot of talks with all of you developers, and I was really inspired, and I thought, well, there's like 1,500 people every day here, and I thought, I'm pretty sure that at least one of these people will be the Indian Zuckerberg. And maybe you say, hey, that's impossible, but I'm here to tell you why it is possible. There are 4 reasons why it's possible. And reason 1 started in this garage. That's in Menlo Park. This garage was owned by Gordon French, and he was one of the 2 people who started the Homebrew Computer Club. And so the idea was, before the Homebrew Computer Club, the only way to have access to a computer was to be an employee. Computers were so expensive that you couldn't program, you couldn't develop if you didn't have your own computer. And one of the things that was very cool at the Homebrew Computer Club in 1974 was the Altair 8800. It was the first computer that you could put together yourself for under $400. And so in the Homebrew Computer Club, these 2 guys, maybe you recognize them, they made this computer, the Apple computer. So this is Steve Wozniak, this is Steve Jobs. And so in the history of the Home Computer Club, they are some of the most well-known people that originated from that computer club, and that led to the Macintosh and the success of Apple. So if I look at my own history, my first computer, I was 12 in 1982, and my first computer was a Texas Instruments, and it had 1 game, Space Invaders. It was a cool game, but of course, if you only have 1 game, you get bored. So what do? You start to write code. And if you start to write code on a computer that didn't even have a hard disk, that didn't even have a floppy drive, I had a cassette deck, and I had to record all my programs on a cassette tape, and it failed more than it worked. So a year later, I had my first portable, like this size. It was bigger than my mother's sewing machine. But it still didn't have a hard drive. It had 2 floppy disk drives. And I wrote games. I wrote my own games because software was so expensive, so I wrote my own games. And to be able to write games, I had to write an own database system. So that own database system, my parents, you know how parents are, they say, why don't you do something useful with your computer? And so what did I do? At the age of 14, I went to different organizations in my hometown, in Flanders, in Ypres, and I asked them, can I have your member lists? So at the age of 14, the year was 84, when organizations wanted to send a mailing, they had to write all the addresses manually on envelopes. And so I said, I'm going to type your addresses, I'm going to type them, I'm going to put them in my database on my computer. In 84, many people didn't even know what a computer or even less what a database was, but they said that this 14-year-old kid, it will be okay, we'll give him his list. So I typed all these addresses in my computer, in my database, and I gave the list back with printed labels. And I did this for free the first time. And so people said, wow, no, we don't have to write the addresses anymore. We can just take a label, put it on an envelope. And so 1 week later, 1 month later, they came knocking at my door and they said, hey, Bruno, that was very cool, these address labels. Do you have some more? And I said, yeah, I could print some more, but I have to buy these labels, and so I have to spend money to give you those labels. Okay, how much does it cost? That was my first business. And had I been had I been 24 instead of 14, I would have been the label king of Flanders. But I was only 14. Now, today, you can rent hardware by the hour. So you can be that entrepreneur too, and you don't have to spend a lot of money up front to get a computer. But then there was a second thing. I explained that software was very expensive, and that's also what people working on these machines, the operating systems were very expensive. So students used proprietary Unix in college. The same was true for employees. And then this guy, Richard Stallman, not in the picture, Richard Stallman at MIT, he got really fed up and he started the Free Software Organization and the Free Software Foundation, and he started to build the GNU operating system. And then this guy, Linus Torvalds, he wrote the kernel. So the GNU operating system with the Linux kernel, we all know this today as Linux, and it was 1.5 times faster than the proprietary servers. So open source makes it possible for you to start with the hardware that is cheap, and then software you can build on the shoulders of giants. And that's also what I try to do. So I had the first personal open source project in '98. It didn't have any success. And I had several other projects, all unsuccessful. And my first successful open source project was released in the year 2000. It wasn't successful from the start, so it was very amateuristic. It was like, text, I made it myself. This, I made it myself too. Nobody liked it afterwards. But so today, we are a company in 3 continents. So we have an office in Singapore, in Belgium, in the US. And so open source made this possible for me. But again, remember my first project in Ypres in my hometown. Nobody knew me. This project would have gotten me nowhere if it hadn't been for reason 3, the World Wide Web. Suddenly, people can promote their product, can promote their work worldwide. I registered Lowagie.com, so my name.com. People didn't even know that I wasn't American. They just assumed that I was American because I was in IT and I produced open source. But I started a business from Belgium, and it made me my first money because I wrote a tutorial, and I was an early adopter of Google AdSense. And so, for instance, in 2005, I made more than $14,000 just by these ads. And by the way, all my investors, Java PDF writer, Java PDF library, XML to PDF, those were all my competitors. So my competitors funded my first project. Now, you see, I was an early adopter, but over the years, although I had more pages, more clicks, more page views, many other people started to use this as a business model, and you see that the revenue dropped. But the tutorial had another side effect. I was asked to write a book. So I wrote a first book for Manning Publications in 2006. It sold 11,600 copies, and I made approximately 33K with it. The 33K was great, but what was even greater was James Gosling. He wrote a blog about my book. So I monitored all the sales, and I had one book this day, one book that day, and then suddenly I saw a peak, 50 books in one weekend. And I said, how does this, what happened? And I noticed that James Gosling had written about the book, and for me that was an even bigger reward than all the rest. Now, this first money that I made, it was the seed money to create a company. So I released iText in the year 2000. The first company was founded in 2008, so it took me 8 years to come to a company. And then in 2014, we won the Fast 50 in Belgium, so we were the fastest growing technology company in Belgium. I won a Java Rockstar Award. That was even more cool. I won a Bronze American Business Award, and the European Business Award, we became national champion, and so on. As a developer, I evolved into being an entrepreneur, and I made a worldwide business. Now, and then eventually, in 2015, I was able to sell my company, and so I had a really good exit. So, reason 1, affordable hardware. Reason 2, open source. Reason 3, the internet. But it took me a long time to build my company. Reason 4, you also need money. And when I look at the sponsors here, I see San Francisco, I see San Jose, I see Mountain View, I see Silicon Valley. So what happened in Silicon Valley? They said, well, a bank will only give you a loan if there's no risk. But if there's no risk, why would you need money? So in Silicon Valley, they said, well, what if we give money to a lot of different companies, and it's okay if 8 of 10 fail, but we are interested in the 2 or the 1 of 10 that is really successful, and that makes us all this money. And so what I see is, well, I saw this slide. I will make such a wonderful India that all Americans will stand in line to get a visa for India. You see, You see, the new president in the States, he makes it very difficult for you to go there because with the H-1B visa, well, you can see this as a problem, but you can also see this as an opportunity. If all those people who go to the States to teach, to get experience, not only from India, but from elsewhere in the world, if they would all come to India, you would have a lot of human capital. And so what happens is, another thing that I just thought of, when I was in San Francisco last fall, you had Oracle World, and you know, in the top 7 of sponsors, you had Infosys, you had Tata, you had Wipro. In the top 15, you had also HCL, you had Cognizant. So 5 out of the top 15 sponsors in Oracle World in San Francisco were from India originally. Why aren't they there? So that's so they should be diamond sponsors. So what I'm saying is, you could make this happen, and you see that people who migrated from India to America, I see that the brain drain is being reversed. They come back home, and what I did after my exit, so those who return, they invest locally. I'm now investing in Belgian companies. So what is needed, the spark, the extra spark that is needed for you to become a successful engineer might be a mindset where Indian people and investments come to India. Now, I told you my own story, but I was inspired by this book, The New Kingmakers. You can find it online. And so he explains that story, not about iText, of course, but about Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. So he explains the 4 key elements that are needed to become a successful entrepreneur. And there's another thing. So if you want to, this slide deck is called Things I Will Tell My Kids If They Become Entrepreneurs. Now, this is surprisingly simple. It's made for kids, but I chose this deck because I recognized myself in this. This was the first years of my career. I was working for an integrator in Belgium, and it felt like being in a treadmill and not going forward. Then I said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That will be better. But now, after being an entrepreneur for 10 years, I know that this is being an entrepreneur. It's not easy either. And I have survivor bias because I had this exit. So it's not that simple to be an entrepreneur, but if you go to this slide deck, there's a lot of really useful tips, and that it's not just for the kid of this guy who wrote this, but it's useful for everyone. So I asked myself, at iText, how can we help people to grow faster? So with iText, I was an engineer, I was a developer, and it took me a lot of time to understand sales. For instance, for me, it was very difficult to understand. I thought that the software, the code, I thought that this was my product. Boy, was I wrong. The software is not the product. What is the product is the end-user license agreement, the support, the service. And so I had to learn this all myself and with a lot of trial and error. What we are doing now with iText is we have our own core engine. We have add-ons on top of it. But next to it, this is open source, most of it. Next to it, we work with some partners, so other companies. And so we are working on a designer to design templates to create PDF. This is a partner who is making this. So we see iText as a platform, and partners can create extra products. But then we saw that a group of developers in Belarus, they said, hey, we have this cool idea of something that we could build on top of iText, but we're coders, we're not salespeople. Could we work together? So now we announce iText as a platform in the sense that these guys, it's like a handful of programmers in Belarus, they created the code, and we are doing the sales for them, we are doing the marketing, because what they made has a lot of value, and they don't have the offices worldwide, so we can work together and we share the revenue. So that kind of shortens the step between being an engineer and having a commercial business. Now, I'm going to very brief, I have 1 minute left. What I want to see is, you saw the picture at the start with some people that I put the face of Mark Zuckerberg on them. What I want to see is at least one of you in the near future be on stage like I was last year and like I'm now this year. So I need another picture with the 17 instead of the 16. So I hope that you enjoyed this talk. It wasn't very technical, but I hope it inspired you to become an entrepreneur. Thank you.